Our streak of overtime games has come to a close, and now the Kraken are looking to get back into the win column.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Seattle hockey fans, welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're bringing you your favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, every single day. Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken, also an accredited media member for Milano Cortina. 100 days celebration coming up, and I will be at the Team USA Summit in New York City next week alongside Joe Dabney, who you will hear from on a bonus episode that we will have later today. Before we get into all of that and today's episode, I want to let you know that this episode of Locked On Kraken, once again, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. We know that the NHL season is in full swing, and you can download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and get your chance to win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Okay, let's get into today's episode. What we're going to talk about is, our best ever start is not necessarily the same as a good start. And I did talk about this in the off season because I did feel that this Kraken team was going to be a better team. And better than what we were last year, than the last 2 years, or cumulatively better than we've ever been is not the same as being good. And that's the thing that I'm curious about. Like, what is truly the ceiling for the Seattle Kraken team? And I know I already have some comments on YouTube saying, well, it's not their fault. This is a team that's hurt. Significant injuries, and there are significant injuries. We've talked about that. You cannot deny that. And there are expectations when you hit the big leagues, and we got to talk about it. And then, was I wrong about Berkly Catton? I think maybe in some ways, yes. And in other ways, again, best ever or good game, for Catton, but is it what the Kraken need, and where does he fit in when some other players are healthy? And then we're going to take you over to Locked On Winnipeg Jets, because they talked a little bit about the Kraken on their episode for today. And what is the opponent saying about us? I thought there were some interesting insights, and I think it's always interesting to hear what other people think about the Kraken. And I'll give you my assessment, what I agree with, what I disagree with, and then on tomorrow's episode, we'll get you ready for that game. But let's take you to the locker room. We saw Matt Murray in net. He did not get a win, but the Kraken didn't get a win. But we haven't seen Murray in net for a while. It's been a while. And that was the big storyline, of course, with Phil. So let's first hear from Matt Murray, a little bit also from Lane Lambert. Later on the show, we'll hear from Jordan Eberle as well. But let's just hear what he thought about the game, and then I'll break down what the stats tell us about his first start for the Kraken.
I mean, yeah, it is what it is, really. It can be tough just, timing-wise, and I think you got to give that team credit, too. They're a hard team to play against, and they made it difficult on me, that first period. They were throwing everything at the net, just causing chaos, getting bodies there. And that makes it even more difficult to kind of find your timing. So I just felt, a little bit off. And, really if I make a save there early in the second period, maybe there's a different flow to the game. But I love the way that our guys battled out there and we defended hard. And, for a team going through a lot of adversity right now, I loved our compete level. So, there's some positives to build on. No, I mean, they, like I said, you got to give that team credit. They thought they pushed really hard, and they got a good power play. They got one on us there early in the second, and, again, if we don't give one up there, I think it's maybe a different game. That was kind of the turning point, so that one's on me. I gotta make at least one of those saves. But, again, like I said, I liked a lot of our compete tonight for a team going through a lot of adversity, so we're going to keep building on that. I think we got the character, we got the depth in this room, and I think at times, especially in a game like that, you're gonna see the other team push you, and we just have to keep bending and not breaking, keeping things simple, getting pucks in, getting pucks out, getting back to basics. And I think we did a lot of that tonight. Especially in bursts late in the second period. We had a heck of a stretch there. We were in their zone for the last 5 or 6 minutes. So we showed signs of it today, and like I said, we just got to keep pushing here.
I thought he played a great game. I thought, they came as advertised. They're a good hockey team, clearly, and they're big. And we knew they would be, throwing pucks in from the point and, looking for sticks. And there was going to be battles in front of the net. And I thought he battled extremely well through traffic. I thought he made a number of good saves tonight.
So, yeah, I mean, this was a solid game, but as you heard from Matt Murray, I like that he could take responsibility. And there were some things, he was under a barrage of fire. There were a lot of shots against the Seattle Kraken, as he alluded to, and we'll hear more from Lane Lambert, our head coach of the Seattle Kraken, when it comes to this. But this is a Washington team that they really peppered this Seattle Kraken team early. And, you can't go down 3-0 so early in the game, is something that Lane Lambert said a little earlier here. And it just seemed like the Seattle Kraken were on the back foot. The shots, I listened to this on the radio, and I believe the stat at the time that Everett and Al were talking about was that roughly around the halfway point in the second period alone, the Seattle Kraken were being outshot roughly 14-2, 4, something like that. They were outshot 11-6 in the first period, 16-3 in the second period. And then, as we'll hear continuing on today's episode, they really started to get the giddy up in the third period. This reminds me, everydayers, this. Again, thanks for making us your first listen, midday listen, or your late night listen. But everydayers and OGers, I used to say under the Dave Haxtell era that maybe we shouldn't be skipping morning skate. Maybe we should run morning skate as if it's the first period of a game. So then our heart, our body, the blood, the lungs, everything's firing as if we've already played one period of hockey. And maybe, just maybe, that would mean that by the time it's game time, the Kraken show up. Now, I don't know if I need to get so snarky yet with this team, but again, I want to talk to you about the theme of the day and maybe of the year. I've already talked about this in the off season. Being the best we've ever been through 7 games is not the same as being a good hockey team. I'm going to say it again. Being the best we've ever been in franchise history, having the best start that we've ever had in franchise history, is not the same as being a good hockey team. Another way of saying it is that the bar was set pretty low. Now, am I saying this is a bad hockey team? No. Am I saying that this is a team that, can't make the playoffs? No. I do think, though, that we're starting to, regress to the mean, so to speak. And we already got comments saying that, the injuries. Well, you don't have to take my word for it. Lane Lambert is not interested in hearing about the Seattle Kraken's injuries, and he knows no one else is gonna feel sorry for them. So I love that he's taking that approach because, yes, of course, injuries, Brandon Montour being away for personal reasons, all of those things, of course, they impact the lineup. The most recent injury that we dealt with and why we saw Ben Myers, I couldn't remember who the crap came up, Ben Myers. The reason we saw Ben Myers was because Mason Marchment is now day-to-day. Let me just go through the report. And the reports for the games. So they get sent the night before. So tonight, Wednesday night, I'll get sent the game report for tomorrow's game. But just as of the game report, we were out Capo Caco, Riker Evans, Freddie Gaudreau, and Jared McCann. Then we added Mason Marchment on there, who is also reported to be day-to-day. That's huge That's huge for us. And so guys are going to have to step up, and we're going to talk a little bit about, how Berkly Catton has been stepping up. And again, am I wrong? Have I been wrong about this? And it's possible. It's definitely possible. Let's hear a little more from Lane Lambert, though, and then we'll get into talking about Berkly Catton and the rest of the team, how they performed, and what we need to see, especially knowing we're taking on the Winnipeg Jets.
Well, I thought we made more plays in the third period. We had times we inflicted pain on ourselves by turning pucks over, not making plays quick enough. Certainly early on in the game, and you can't do that. We have to be better than that. But in the third period, I thought we made more plays, and I thought we had a pretty good push in the third period. But you can't put yourself in a position where you're down 3-0 in this league, and it happened really fast at the start of the second.
Put a lot of pressure on us first two periods. We had a tough time handling that. They started rolling around the offensive zone, and we kind of, we defended well, but we just, gave them too much ozone time. I thought in the third we had a pretty good push. We had a chance to make it 3-2. I think I just hit them off the toe there. I like the pushback. I like the effort, but there's definitely some things we need to clean up. Yeah, we're definitely being tested. We have some adversity, some big guys out, but ultimately you're going to go through a season where every team, there's injuries that happen. Guys need to step up. Guys need to play more minutes, and right now that's the case for us. So up until maybe the last two games, it's kind of we've been going. So it's not going to be a smooth season. You're going to have times where adversity happens, and right now that's right now. It's just as simple as looking forward to the next game. We'll look at video, try and clean some things up. Like I said, I like the third. I like the push that we had, but ultimately you'd like to be on the other end of that.
Yeah, and you keep hearing everyone talk about the third period. Again, I was listening on the radio. The third period alone. Well, really, I think the second and the third, but in the third period alone, if I remember correctly, we hit the post, the Seattle Kraken hit the post 3 separate times. I think between the second and the third, it was 5 posts. And that means you're right there, you're on target. There were some other near misses, just yawning net, and you can't get the stick down, or you whiff on the shot, things of that nature. So there's definitely things that this Kraken team, yes, they're going through adversity, but you heard Jordan Eberle, our captain, say, that's hockey, baby. That is every team all the time. The Kraken know that story all too well. We had Eberle started off last season great and then had a really random injury. So, that's hockey, baby. You got to get through it. And let's talk a little bit about what this team can do, but also some bright spots, including probably Berkly Catton at the top of that list. We'll get into that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Let's be honest, most of us can't even name all of our financial accounts, let alone what they're worth. Between 401ks, savings, and investments, that sounds very adult to me, but it's easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. That's why I use Monarch Money, especially for my business accounts. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. You can organize your tracking. You can set, categories and look at the dashboards. I love looking at the cash flow dashboard most of the time, unless the money's not flowing in. But for me, that dashboard really tells me, okay, if things are a little stagnant, what do I need to do? What contracts do I need to secure to make sure that we can keep things moving at Black Rosy Media, which of course, Locked On Kraken, we're contracted, in case you didn't know, it's one of our contracts, Black Rosy Media. Anyway, don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code Locked On NHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code Locked On NHL for half off your first year. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends over at Rougiette. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired. It happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. And that's where Rougiette comes in. Rougiette.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED, designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Now, the process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly to your door. Visit rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL to get 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNHL so they know we sent you. Rougiette, stop making excuses and start making moves. We want the Seattle Kraken to start making moves because, listen, we're taking on a team that's played, I believe it's 3 or 4 games in 5 days. So, again, no one feels bad for the Seattle Kraken, and we can't feel bad for ourselves either. And something, again, that there are bright spots. I know I'm coming to you with the tough love. And, I think that's important. But, there are some good things that we can glean from this. We did come up against a really good goaltender last night, considered a quality start per Allison Lucan's instant analysis. But it's also a good team. And we knew that, right? We knew that going in. We knew this was going to be a good team. The Washington Capitals, they were peppering, Logan Thompson, was really good. A .947 save percentage on the night and made some pretty solid stops that, just put the Seattle Kraken in a position where they had to get crafty. They had to get more shots, and they did. They did that in the third period. Some other things, that I liked is I didn't watch this game, not in total, I should say, because again, I was listening on the radio. I am locked out regionally when when the games are on the network that they were on last night. But I think that we're seeing Berkly Catton figure out the NHL game. And that was the big thing for me. But what Al and Everett also said, which is something I've been telling you on this show, is that you're going to get time when the brass under Lane Lambert, when they trust that you can be reliable defensively. And that is something that I had concerns about with regard to Berkly Catton. And, talked about the preseason. I think that he was, as I like to say, serviceable, which is solid, in his first game, but the confidence, him seeking his shot, because at the end of the day, we do want him to be defensively responsible. But he's playing the wing, so there's a little less quote unquote true responsibility baked into his position now that he's not playing center. But you still need to be able to get out there and be effective. And so if we look at game score, Ben Myers, Jamie Alexiak, Jaden Schwartz, Josh Mahura, Berkly Catton, your top 5 players. So once again, Catton in the top 5. He actually has a better game score than Eberle and Beniers, who are just below him in this game. But you can tell that Ben Myers had a big impact. His defense was above average. His team defense, when he's on the ice, above average. His individual defense, very solid. He was a part of the offense being above average when he's on the ice, and his individual offense, high marks there. So, Ben Myers is a perfect example of why sometimes we lean into HC standing for Hockey Club Opportunity. And so I don't want to hear excuses. I'm sorry, Kraken fans. You've got Berkly Catton who's showing up. Shane Wright, I think, has been quiet in some ways for a lot of people, but I think he's doing effectively what I said Matty Beniers was doing last season. So I'm not worried about it yet. I think he has become a reliable guy on the ice, and his time will come. You already know how I feel about the year of Beniers. Matty Beniers had a hot start. We need to keep him going. But when you look at time on ice, Stevenson is still getting a lot of time. He's trusted by Lane Lambert. And you know what? I think he's been okay this season, better than last season. Early returns. He's been okay. But in time on ice, we're seeing Stevenson, Eberle, Beniers, Schwartz, and then Catton as far as time on ice, then Tolvanen and Wright. So Stevie is still our leading centerman as far as time on ice. And so I know some people don't like to hear that, but that's what it is. I mean, again, I wasn't watching this particular game with video. I was listening audio only. So sometimes you miss things. I do think that Stevenson has some giveaways or takeaways, turnovers. I don't know. The hockey terms are so confusing to me sometimes. Turnovers. He turns over the puck, or he makes plays that lead to a turnover, errant passes, HOPE passes a little bit more than I would like. He's certainly not the only one, but he's noticeable because you want a veteran like him to make good decisions and be an anchor for this team. And sometimes he's just not. That being said, his upside, I do think, and the way he can contribute on a continuous basis offensively is still probably a little bit higher than Matty Beniers, or excuse me, than Shane Wright right now. And you see that reflected in that Lane Lambert trusts him. So, was I wrong about Berkly Catton? Probably. I just didn't think he was NHL ready, but I like that he seems to be super sharp, a la Matty Beniers and Shane Wright. He learns quickly. He is able to make adjustments quickly, at least from what we've seen so far. And I think if I'm going to completely walk back what I said, and also I never do that. I said what I said. But if I'm going to completely say, yeah, I was wrong, then I think I still need to see more. And it's not because his skill set isn't good, but I alluded to this earlier in the episode. It's the same thing. Best ever ain't the same as good. Better and playing well doesn't necessarily mean that you are what the team needs in any particular moment in time. And I'm not committed to that. I don't know that I'm going to be like, yeah, Berkly Catton's great and we don't need Berkly Catton. We need offense. And so if this guy can start scoring goals, if he can start setting up players like Eberle and Beniers to score goals regularly, and he almost had another assist in the game, one of those near misses by Eberle, I believe. He's making the right decisions. He's setting his teammates up to score. And I think he's starting to also figure out how to seek his own shot. And that's what we need him to do. If for no other reason, then the scout is pretty low on him in the NHL. So he has free reign to experiment. And if and when he does start scoring and teams do start to zero in on him, then guess what? He opens up, in theory, opportunities for other players, because you got to decide on that line. Are you going to focus on Matty Beniers? Are you going to focus on Jordan Eberle? Are you going to focus on Berkly Catton? And I like that. Now we need to see if his execution can be better. His finish can be better than what we have on the Kraken right now. Not the highest bar, I got to be honest, but I don't think we know that yet about Berkly Catton. It's only been 2 games. So, yeah, I think he's definitely doing better than I thought he would. And I just should listen to y'all, cuz I have so many comments on YouTube, and even messages that I get on our social media platforms from some of our audio listeners, or people who just choose and prefer to comment on social media. So I know that y'all are pretty high on Berkly Catton. Ava Wood, who's going to join us again for a bonus episode later today, we're going to do a live stream. We're going to be on with Joe Dabney and Ava Wood, who helped out Locked on Kraken. Ava was at the PWHL Seattle announcement and unveiling of their inaugural season jerseys. Joe Dabney was at yesterday's Caps game and had some great behind the scenes stuff that we haven't posted at all. So you get to hear if you join us later or listen and watch the episode that we'll post a little later after this one, a couple of hours after this one, then you'll get to see some of that. But Ava's pretty high on Berkly Catton. I think Joe wants to see him do well as well. So I'll ask them a little bit about how they think Berkly Catton is doing. But let me know in the comments or on social media at Locked on Kraken on Twitter, Instagram. I personally use and check YouTube and TikTok the most, but we have some as I'm saying, our hype squad, we've got some folks, our street team that's helping out in some of those areas. So let us know what you think about Berkly Catton. Was I wrong? Is he NHL ready? Do you think he can stick around, or do we need a little bit more time? And again, for me, I think it's just, is he what this Kraken team needs, regardless of injury? Obviously, the injuries are why we're giving him some time. And I think that's fortuitous for him. And I hope he takes advantage. And so far he has. Again, I've been impressed. I definitely have. And we still need to see more. But that's not a knock on Berkly Catton, because again, we need to see more from this entire team. Coming up next, I want you to hear a little bit more from Lane. And I think maybe one more clip from Eberly, but let's hear a little bit more from them, what needs to happen. And then we're going to take you over to Locked on Winnipeg Jets. They had an episode posted earlier today talking about why, even though the Winnipeg Jets have had a lot of games in short order, I think it's like 3 or 4 games in the last 5 days, they seem pretty confident that they can get through the Kraken. And I mean, some of the data points suggest that they're probably right, but I just think it's interesting to hear what other folks have to say about the Seattle Kraken. We'll get into that as we continue on with this Wednesday episode of Locked on Kraken. Mentioned it at the top. Today's episode of Locked on Kraken brought to you by FanDuel. We know the NHL, NFL season is here. MLB is in the World Series. I'm sorry, Mariners fans, but FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss, regardless of who your team is. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. We're talking player props, parlays, even live lines during the game. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, Seattle hockey fans and Seattle sports fans overall, because I talk about the Mariners, sometimes I talk about the Seattle Reign, and if you have a problem that I talk about PWHL Seattle, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not the only Seattle Kraken focused podcast that is covering the PWHL. As a matter of fact, I'm very proud to say that I am a part of a delegation and a Seattle Kraken media corps that understands and fully supports and appreciates not just all hockey in Seattle and the Pacific Northwest, but all sports. So there you go. But we will be talking about PWHL Seattle. I'll talk about other Seattle sports teams, when it makes sense, or when we have some time and just have an interesting guest that can illuminate us. We've had Ty Dane Gonzalez on, so many other people. Everett and I have talked baseball. I'm dying to get John Forslund on the show, hopefully, so he and I can talk baseball, so that's what we do. So that's, if that's your vibe, then you're in the right spot. If you're not, that's okay too. That's okay too. Find your people. I want you to find your people. But let's talk, speaking of our people, let's hear, a little bit more from the Seattle Kraken. I believe the next clips are going to be from Lane Lambert. I think we're all done with Ebb's clips, so it should be Lane Lambert. And then let's hear what the Winnipeg Jets host, Locked on Jets, had to say about taking on the Kraken tomorrow.
Well, we've got to be better on face-offs. We're not winning enough face-offs in any of the games. We're under, we're 45% before the game started. and we have to help our centermen more as well. I thought there was situations tonight where there's pucks laying there, the centerman has tied them up, and we're not getting to those pucks, and that's unacceptable, and we have to be better. Well, I mean, certainly there's maybe a chemistry when you have your players in there as opposed to don't. But that's just the way it goes. We had some guys step up. I thought Ben Myers played well tonight after traveling all day. We have an opportunity here. We can lament on the last couple of games here. We have an opportunity here in Winnipeg to go 500 on this road trip through the adversity that we're going through, and that's our focus.
Listen, I like a lot of what Lane is saying here, including, he nailed it. Ben Myers had a great game. We already talked about what he did as far as game score. He talked about faceoffs, and the Seattle Kraken ahead of tomorrow's game, 45.7%, 28th in a 32-team league in faceoffs. But what you heard him talk about, because he's talked about faceoffs before. And so again, people saying, oh, it's not their fault. It's the injuries are why we're losing. No. I have told you time and time again, I am willing to be positive and excitable when the situation warrants and dictates that. The Seattle Kraken, there are a lot of positives here. And one of the positives is that there are things that they are not executing on, but they're staying in games. You can look at overtime games as, is this a team that's clawing and fighting and willing themselves late in games to get to overtime? They're putting in the hard work, and the Kraken have won games like that, or at least gotten to overtime because of how they play in that way. But you can also look at overtime games, wins or losses, and think, did this team do enough? Did they empty the tank? Did they execute? And that's what Lane is saying. Hey, our centermen trying to win faceoffs, or at least tying it up so that someone else can come get the puck. You have to do it. 50-50 puck battles. If the puck is loose and you are free, you're not being tied up, go get the dang puck. That's what I heard him saying. And I love that, because the Seattle Kraken have a history. They have a history. This team has a history, and there are some new players, but there are also some players that have been with us since the very beginning. This team has a history of falling short when it comes to the things that you need to do on a regular basis to be a top team in the NHL. There's no getting around that. And yes, we are the newest franchise. So some of this takes time, but also things like, if you see a free puck, go get the puck. Those things shouldn't matter if you're playing for an expansion franchise or not. That's something that you should do. And those are the habits that Lane Lambert wants to see this team execute. So we're 45.7% on the faceoff dot. We're going to play a team tomorrow that's 52% at the faceoff dot, 12th in the league. Their goals for is almost 3.83 for 4th overall. Their goals against limited to 2.17, 4th overall in the league. They have the best penalty kill, 96.3%. We plummeted to 66.7% in the last couple of games. We are now at 29th in the league. Our power play is solid, definitely a bright spot, 22.7 for 13th in the league. But guess what? We're going up against a 30% power play team, best for 3rd in the league. Our goaltending's been a little shaky. I think we might see Matt Murray a little bit more in the next handful of games, at least. I kind of hope so. I think he did pretty solid, but some of that was just giveaways in tough spots, and we got to fix that. We got to clean that up. But let's hear what the host of Locked On Winnipeg Jets thinks about the Kraken going into tomorrow night's game.
The Jets will be getting into action this coming weekend, starting tomorrow night against the Seattle Kraken. Going to be a busy stretch. 3 games, 4 nights. And some of these opponents the Jets are going to face over the next couple of days are either ones they've played already that have given them fits like the Flames, or a couple of teams that in the past were kind of annoying. The Kraken and, of course, Utah. Both of these teams have been a little bit challenging for the Jets in the past. we're going to talk about how Winnipeg is going to start this stretch off with a hopefully winning effort against the Kraken, who themselves have been a little bit uneven. So the Seattle Kraken, what are they up to, right? Well, to start their season, it's been a little bit helter-skelter. As of this recording, which is a nice frosty Tuesday evening, the Kraken just lost to the Caps 4-1. Not exactly the prettiest effort, even though it was a road game, a little bit of travel, not exactly close. Still not really what you want to see for this Kraken squad. Now, the Caps are one of the better play-driving teams in the league, so losing doesn't mean a ton necessarily, and it's very early in the season. But Seattle in the Pacific Division has been conceding quite a few goals. Now, a lot of early teams have given up, 20-plus goals already, so that's not necessarily the biggest issue. But for the Kraken, their offense is not exactly the most potent. It is fairly well distributed. When you look at their scoring record, you've got guys like Chandler Stevenson and Dunn and Eberle all getting around 5 to 6 points, and you've had some contributions from other players like Shane Wright, Schwartz, recent addition Mason Marchman, all that stuff. So, this team has legitimate talent, and of course, we all know that Matty Beniers is growing into be a really elite young forward. Shane Wright has really started to find his traction recently, but this team has had some issues. Defensively, they're a little all over the place. The goaltending hasn't exactly been the sharpest. And it just feels like Seattle hasn't really coalesced into the most impressive team just yet. And I think if you're looking at this Kraken squad and what they're capable of, you're probably not going to love their overall performance recently. They are like 3-2-2 or 3-2-1, something like that. And listen, this team in the past has been a bit of an annoying team for the Jets to face. Winnipeg has, I think, had a pretty decent record against them. Not exactly, like a sparkling record, but, the Kraken have a lot of vulnerabilities, and the Jets have been one of those teams that, by the time they've faced Seattle, have usually had the depth advantage, the defensive advantage, all that stuff. And when you look at how Seattle has done to start the season, it's been a little all over the place. They beat the Ducks and the Knights to start the year, and then followed that up with a couple of losses against Montreal and Ottawa. Then they did beat the Leafs, but I don't know if that means a lot. Their most recent losses, though, include a 5-2 drubbing at the hands of the Flyers, and, of course, the second half of this back-to-back for them, which was against the Capitals. So, yeah, a bit of a mixed start. I think what you notice with a lot of these games is that the Kraken are scoring around 3 goals or less for most of these efforts. In some games, they've only managed 1. And I think this is going to be a little bit of a challenge going forward, right? The Kraken don't exactly have the deepest offense. And I think when you look at this lineup and how they're arranged, for the Jets, when you're already banged up, I think having a team like this is probably something that's a little bit of a helpful situation, right? Winnipeg's offense itself is not as deep as it could be. Even though Lowry and Perfetti might be coming back in the next half month, it's still a couple weeks away. So the Jets kind of have to make do with what they've got. Up front, Seattle is rolling Berkly Catton, Stevenson, and Eberle as their first line. Then Schwartz, Beniers, and Tolvanen on the second. On your third, you've got Winterton, Wright, and Neiman. And then on the fourth, Cartier, Myers, and Hayden. So you'll notice that this, I guess, bottom six has a lot of interesting younger players and a couple of their draft picks, plus, guys like Hayden who have been around for a little bit. But there's not a lot of elite finishing talent overall. And then their defense is Dunn and Larson on your first pairing, Mahura and Alexiak on your second, and then Lindgren and Fleury on your third. Not our Fleury, but Cale Fleury. Overall, this team is not super, super deep, and I think this will probably play to Winnipeg's advantage. Also worth shouting out that a lot of the guys that typically, the Kraken would rely upon are hurt right now. Evans is hurt. Kako is hurt. You've also got Freddie Gaudreau and Brandon Montour who have missed time. McCann has been dealing with some stuff. Marchman has been dealing with some stuff. So it's been a little bit of a chaotic situation. And in net, relying on Matt Murray and Joey Decord to try and carry things, not exactly the easiest solution. So in my mind, despite, the Jets having their own issues, I feel like Winnipeg should come out with a pretty nice victory here. Getting an early 2 points at home on this homestand, when you have a chance to maybe come away with 4, I would say. I think you want to take these first 2 games if you can. Now, how the Flames played against Winnipeg in their home game earlier this week, obviously the Jets didn't play super well, so I don't know if I want to bank on the Jets beating the Flames twice in a week, but, at least for this Kraken game, I do think Winnipeg should have a pretty nice advantage. And, of course, the Jets have had a few days of rest at this point. Should be, I would say, a 4-2 victory. I think it'll be a little bit closer. I think Winnipeg will have to deal with some rush counters in offense that have been a little bit of a challenge. I wouldn't expect too many lineup changes. The only thing we'll have to keep an eye on for is, how the rookies are phased in. Lambert in his first game, I thought, looked pretty decent. The underlying stats maybe not so effusive and praiseworthy, but, in 10.5 minutes of action, you're probably not going to see a lot when the Jets themselves were kind of getting outplayed for stretches of the game. So, I think, Winnipeg has a pretty good advantage, at least on home ice. Winnipeg in Canada Life is very, very tough to beat, and I would expect that to be the same. I think the crowd energy will be loud. I think, the environment and rink will be very noisy. So I think the Jets should come away with a 4-2 win. But curious about your score predictions. Let me know in the comments below.
Honestly, that was pretty good. There were some things, of course, we are not relying on Matt Murray. He just got his first start, but maybe we should. Let's keep an eye. And I've been saying this. Let's keep an eye on goaltending. There's some things that, because we had reporter boots on the ground, that I want to follow up on, because I think goaltending, I've felt this way for a few games, and I was like, does Joey need more rest? And I kind of felt it. I think that we need to get our goalies some home cooking, but I'm a little concerned that maybe our goalie trio is not what do I want to say here? I feel like they're not completely where they want to be. And I think it's individually, collectively, and I think individually there might be different reasons for that, but I just feel like it's a little off. My eye test is telling me it's off. My auntie vibes, as I sometimes say, are telling me that it's a little off. So I want to keep an eye on goaltending. And again, I have to follow up on some observations that our street team made and see if we can get to the bottom of this. But remember, I've been saying keep an eye on goaltending for a while now. That's our show. Again, we're going to have a bonus episode. Ava and Joe are going to join me to talk about their experiences. Ava at PWHL Seattle announcement, Joe in Washington to see the Seattle Kraken fall to the Capitals. But again, picking up some great things just overall. If you're a Kraken fan and you love the broadcast team, I think you're going to want to hear what Joe has to say. And then just some observations about the team. A reminder, be kind to yourself and extend that kindness to others when you're able, once your cup is full. We hold fast, we stay true, and loud and proud we say, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you to my YouTube viewers and commenters. Thank you for our audio listeners, and I will catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.